Good evening for those that are just joining us. Welcome to the inaugural Ohio Academy of Science Goes Green. We are so excited to have you all with us this evening on this dreary kind of evening. Hopefully this will definitely bring some sunshine to your lives today. We have quite the speakers for this evening, and I am absolutely thrilled to have a chance to co-host this event this evening with Hallie Miller and Mr. Mike Voytech. So without further ado, I wanted to just do a little bit of housekeeping things. If you wouldn't mind, make sure that in your personal identification, if you wouldn't mind renaming yourselves. It went out under my link. I wanted to make sure that everybody had the link and we didn't have any problems. So if you wouldn't mind renaming yourself, and I mean, Angela McMurray is awesome and that's totally fine, but we'd like to know who's here with us tonight and where you're from. Make sure that you grab a beverage or a plate of dinner or a snack, because we really have quite the treat for you all this evening. And if you don't mind making sure that you're muted on your end, that would be awesome, so that it's not distracting to our amazing presenters. So again, on behalf of the Ohio Academy of Science, I want to welcome you all to this inaugural event. I know that Earth Day is in April, but we're almost to the halfway on the opposite side of the calendar from Earth Day. And what better way to keep our amazing planet in everyone's foresight than to have this amazing event tonight. So welcome. And I want to introduce my other co-hosts for this evening. Miss Hallie Miller is a member of our board of trustees, and I'm going to let her introduce herself very briefly, and then she is going to introduce our keynote speaker. So Hallie, I'm going to hand it over to you. Maybe. Uh-oh. Hallie, are you on? Well, like all good, Zoom events, we can't have one without having a little bit of a glitch in the system. So hopefully Hallie will be able to join us this evening so that she can participate in this opportunity. So I would like to introduce Sally. Oh, sorry about that. I would like to introduce Sally Gladwell, our keynote speaker for this evening. And Sally, I do not have your bio, so I'm going to let you go ahead and tell us about yourself, and I'm going to turn everything over to you.
Thank you, Angela. Can everyone hear me? Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And at least I think I'm going to share my, I'm going to stop my video and then share my screen. And I hope that you all can see the first slide of my presentation. Is that correct, Angela? Okay, great.
You are perfect.
All right. Well, I will introduce myself, but I want to start by saying thank you to Hallie, who unfortunately isn't with us yet. I've just sent her a text hoping that she can join us, but I appreciate her invitation, and certainly appreciate, she is one of our superstars at Mannequin Smith, and we're lucky to have her, and you're lucky to have her on your board. So appreciate Hallie very much. And also thank you to Angela for organizing and coordinating today, and even helping earlier this week to iron out some technical wrinkles as we prepared for today. And thank you to all of you for all of the work that you do with the Ohio Academy of Science and advocating for science education and STEM education. I will share that there's a sweet spot in my heart. My husband was a beloved high school science teacher, first physics and then chemistry. And there were a lot of talks around our dinner table about our shared passion for science education, and then the application of science education. So our 3 children have been subjected to lots and lots of home science experiments and discussions about the importance of science, and they have been dragged to lots of my project sites over the years to see brownfield revitalization and ecological restoration in action. So thank you all very much for the important work that you do and that this organization has done for over a century. As Angela said, I'm Sally Gladwell. I am a senior vice president and principal of the Mannequin Smith Group, and I also serve on our board of directors. My education is, my bachelor's is in biology and peace studies from Xavier University, and then I got my master's in environmental science and management from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. And I've been with the Mannequin Smith Group since 2009, a couple other consulting firms before then. At the Mannequin Smith Group, I lead the company's, we call it the geo-environmental. It's kind of a made-up word for Mannequin Smith, but basically our environmental business sector throughout all of Ohio. Slides are not, oh, there we go. So that's the role I serve at Mannequin Smith, and I will say I am extraordinarily lucky to be part of a company like Mannequin Smith. I love what I do, and my litmus test for the project work that I am involved with is, if it's a project that I could take my 3 kids to and have them be proud of me, then I want to be part of it. And I just got a text back from Hallie. She got locked out of our Cleveland office. So that is why she did not join us on time. So I will extend apologies for her. We provide a lot of multidisciplined services in the world of STEM. So here's just a head spinning few of them. And I'll talk to you about some of these in particularity today, but here's Mannequin Smith by the numbers. We, and at a glance of our office locations, we have 5 offices in Ohio. We got our start in Toledo. That's where our headquarters are in Myaamia, southern suburb of Toledo. We have 5 offices in Ohio, 7 in Michigan, 1 in West Virginia, and now a new one in Huntsville, Alabama. And what I like to tell people is that for a regional firm our size, there is no company more diverse than we in terms of our service offerings. So we, have since our founding in a little over 65 years ago, found a way to apply science and engineering to meet the varied needs of our clients. From project start to project finish. So in the next handful of slides, I'm going to talk about some of those services that we offer, but I'm going to focus on the ones that touch environmental and the projects that we work on in environmental. So a little bit of engineering in terms of redevelopment of brownfields. But rather than just skim the surface and talk about all of our services, I'm going to focus more on the environmental side, because that's the world that I live in at Mannequin Smith. So we have a whole service ecological or natural resources consulting suite. And that includes, anything from providing assessment and evaluation of ecological resources to evaluating them, not just for their size, but their quality, wetlands permitting, restoration design. So trying to restore some of the lost ecological services services that have been lost over time to development. Our environmental services include things like site assessments, testing the land to identify whether contamination is present or not, and the extent to which it's present, and the type of contamination, if it's in groundwater, soil, sediment, air, indoor air. As I mentioned before, on the brownfield redevelopment side of things in particular, we like to be in lockstep with our clients from beginning to end. So we offer grant writing and funding strategy services so that we can help bring resources to the table to help them get the project work done. And in brownfield revitalization, for example, that's an important piece, because in a lot of our older cities in particular across Ohio, we have brownfields, underutilized property, and sometimes often contaminated property that has been allowed to sit idle with no one responsible for it. And so our clients rely heavily on grants and other public sources of funding to help clean up those sites, remove the economic disincentives, and then transforming them to a higher and better use. So here's some pictures of some of that in action, removal of underground storage tanks, testing of the soil, helping landfills stay in compliance. I mentioned our funding strategy assistance and grant writing. Turns out that's an important piece, not just on the brownfield revitalization side of things, but certainly on the restoration of our natural resources. So when you think about the water crisis that occurred in Toledo in 2014, where for 3 days we couldn't consume or even touch our drinking water because of the harmful algal bloom in Lake Erie, that has raised the awareness of the importance of our management of our natural resources, and in particular our water, as we in the Great Lakes sit on the largest source of fresh water on the planet. So it's important that we help our clients bring, again, as I say, the resources to the table, the grant money if needed, to help get the project work done. Cultural resources fall slightly outside of our environmental services, but it's very closely connected, because as we're digging at sites and looking at, say, restoring a stream bank or a wetland, so anywhere earth is going to be disturbed, we want to make sure that, and our clients need to make sure, are required to make sure that there are no cultural resources that could be impacted. If you think about these old towns along waterways, and we certainly have a lot of them in Ohio, that's where old settlements were. And so it's not uncommon at all for our archaeologists to uncover cultural resources of real value. And so our archaeology team helps us identify those things, assess them, exhume them, and preserve them when appropriate. NEPA is a federal law that applies to our projects. Anytime federal funding is dedicated to or contributes to a project, it triggers the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. And so we have become specialists. We have a whole team of specialists who will help clients through that NEPA process to identify environmental sensitivities and things that we need to take special caution of when conducting earth disturbing projects. And then similarly, our geotechnical engineering staff, you can see a drill rig there on the left-hand side picture. When we do have a whole drilling team, and both an Ohio drill team and cache of drill rigs, as well as in Michigan. And we use those not just to advance soil borings for sampling to test environmental contamination, but also for geotechnical, to conduct a geotechnical evaluation. So to understand the soils at a site, to understand their developability, their permeability, their likelihood that they can hold and withstand various types of development, including if, we're creating some benching for a stream restoration project. We want to understand what the soils are like and their strength, their plasticity, their permeability, so that we can advise clients on what amendments might need to occur in order to transform that land. And then, as I say, civil engineering, it does fall outside of our environmental services, but it's so closely linked, especially when we talk about the transformation of contaminated lands or brownfields and that redevelopment piece. So our environmental scientists work very closely with our site development team, and I'll show you some project examples of that momentarily. But here you can see some examples of the site development renderings and photos of projects that we've been a part of. And landscape architecture is another important piece of our projects when we're transforming land. We don't have any in-house architects who work on buildings, but with our site development team and our landscape architecture team, we work on everything outside of the building and up to the edge of the building. We can help our clients design and plan. And our graphic design services have become more and more important, particularly, as I mentioned, with projects that are funded by grants and other public sources. The reason being, often those grants will trigger a requirement to help educate on why these projects are done, why grants are dedicated to investing in these projects. So if we're working on a wetland restoration project, the grant may require that there be some interpretive signage there to help educate visitors to, say, a park or to that space as to why the money was dedicated to that project and the importance of it and the effect of restored wetlands in our state of Ohio, where we've lost over 90% of our wetlands in the last century. So we have some very skilled graphic designers who have become adept at creating these interpretive signs, whether they be along trails or wayfinding signs or at restoration sites. But it's become a very important piece for our clients, again, when we're trying to be a one-stop shop and be their trusted advisor through the entire project process. I mentioned our made-up word, geoenvironmental. This slide kind of depicts sort of the three, I refer to them as the three subsectors in our business sector of the environmental world or geoenvironmental world. So that includes our clients who, both private and public, who manage solid waste. So they may have landfills and they need our help designing them safely, expanding them, capturing the gas and using them for using the captured gas for energy, keeping them in compliance, so testing the groundwater regularly. If there are some compliance issues, helping them come back into compliance and safely manage the leachate and the methane emissions from the landfill. And then the Brownfield Subsector, I've mentioned a few times, but that's where we're helping to identify environmental conditions at underutilized property so that we can help clients develop a cleanup strategy. And while we don't do the cleanup ourselves, we will design the cleanup strategy. Does the dirt need to be dug up and hauled off the site? Could it be treated in situ, in place, so that the contamination is rendered null or safe for the intended use? Do we need to pump and treat groundwater? So we'll design the strategy and then we'll oversee the cleanup. And then we bring in our site development folks to help redevelop and transform the property. And then I've mentioned our natural resources subsector as well. And those are our clients who are managing natural resources, whether they be a park district, a watershed group, a municipality that has, a lake or a stream or some sort of natural features on properties, and they may be responsible for their care and their upkeep. So that's sort of the three buckets of clients, if you will, or types of clients that we serve from geoenvironmental. And I hope that was a helpful overview of our services and the types of clients we help by applying environmental science principles. Now I'm going to talk to you about just a handful of projects, trying to be cognizant of time. So I may give these a very swift overview, and I'll welcome questions at the end if there's anything you want to take a deeper look at. I tried to choose a variety of projects just to give you a smattering of some of the projects in Ohio. Some you may recognize, some may be practically in your backyard. Lake County Landfill and the folks who operate it have been a client of ours for a very long time. We are lucky and proud to be considered a trusted advisor to them. We help them with a whole host of services, from permitting to landfill cell expansion, staying in compliance, designing their pipelines for leachate collection and groundwater monitoring and gas capture. So we're very happy to be working in partnership with Lake County Landfill to help manage solid waste safely. And there you can see liner being installed. You can see some of the testing that's being done at Lake County Landfill. And there's another aerial shot of it. And you can understand the importance of maintaining the landfill safely, given the proximity to the lake, among other natural resources. You may not recognize the name Overland Industrial Park yet, but I bet you would recognize the name Jeep. Overland Industrial Park sits on about 113 acres of what used to be the oldest continuously running automotive manufacturing plant in North America, and that was Toledo's Overland Jeep. So there's some photos of the Jeep plant when it was operational. Mannequin Smith was brought in around 2009 to help with completion of some site assessments to understand the site conditions. The site had been abandoned at that point, and the Toledo Lucas County Port Authority was taking ownership of it with the intent to transform it and put it into higher and better use. And it is located in a strategic part of Toledo. It's right along I-75. The Ottawa River transects the site. I'll show you that in just a second, but it was an important piece of land for a lot of reasons. And so we were brought in to complete environmental site assessments, to write two very big Clean Ohio Revitalization Fund grants totaling $4.5 million. It's the first time that two complementary CORF grants had ever been dedicated to the same project. But the state believed so strongly in the plans for this site and what the Port Authority was trying to accomplish. So here's some additional photos dating back to early in the 1900s when the plant was operational to what it looked like just at the time that right before we got involved. And there's that, you can see the Ottawa River running through the land. There's where the aerial photo shows the site once it had been cleared of all of the manufacturing plant buildings. The Overland stack was left, and the Port Authority was intent on keeping that stack just to maintain some of the history and recognizable feature of the site. And so this is one of those projects where we just really applied as many of the services as one could think of that are offered by environmental and engineering consulting firms. It was a very interesting project to work on and a very exciting one. We even were able to use some of the surplus dredge material that the Port Authority manages from being dredged from the Western Lake Erie Basin and the Myaamia River, tested it for its appropriate degree of clean. It turns out it was very, very clean, no contamination, but had quite a bit of nutrients in it, as you can imagine. And so we completed a beneficial reuse of dredge on the site to help restore some of the lost sediment along the Ottawa River and to restore that with native species to hold the dredge material in place. Here's what it looks like now. Our transportation engineers designed a roundabout. We designed some sustainable stormwater features, and it now has a sizable solar field. And even Toledo School for the Arts now has a sculpture garden at the edge of the solar field. So it's been a very exciting transformation for those of us who live in Toledo to watch, and for those of us at Mannequin Smith to be part of. Highly visible from I-75. So for those of you who live near or who visit, I hope you look at this with new eyes the next time you drive by. Cullen Park is another Toledo site. This is located in Point Place. And one of the most important features of Cullen Park, it's a City of Toledo owned park. It is the only publicly owned place in Toledo where you have direct access to Lake Erie. That's kind of incredible when you think about it, but it makes Cullen Park a really special place. And the city applied for a $600,000 Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, or GLRI grant, and was awarded that grant. And then we were hired to help them implement it using best management practices for sustainable stormwater management. So we packed as many different BMPs into that project as we could fit. We removed invasive species, we added native species and habitat. We coordinated a lot with the neighbors, especially at first, to make them aware of the project, its importance, to let them know that the site would be changing. And when we first talked to the neighbors, you can see that some of the neighboring streets dead end right into the park, and their concern was, gosh, it's become really weedy and overgrown, and we're scared. Our backyards butt up to the park and it gets dark at night. You can't really see into it. We'd like some of that brush removed. And by the way, since you're talking stormwater, all we care about is we want our streets to stop flooding. And so even though this wasn't a part of the actual project, the way it was originally designed, we said, well, let's see what we can do about that. So we ended up taking the catch basins from where the streets dead end into the park, and we brought the stormwater drainage into the park, but we brought it in through what's called basically riprap outletted protection as a filtering device, and then into the wetlands to further polish the stormwater coming off the street. So we not only mitigated their flooding issues and ice hazards in the winter, but we're able to cleanse that water before it's discharged to the nearby lake. We installed things like a gravel verge to capture a first flush of stormwater off of the parking lot. We restored some existing really low quality wetlands, just scrappy wetlands, and made them beautiful and higher quality. And then, so as not to disrupt the hydrology of the wetlands, we put boardwalk over those, trying to bring people to the water, bring people to the natural resources to be able to appreciate them and therefore protect them in the future. So this is, these are some of the pieces from actually the interpretive signage that we created for the site. Again, wanting to invite people close to the natural resources and have them help them understand the science behind the changes that were made and why they're important. Why vernal pools, for example, are important for amphibians, because of the rise and fall of the water over the course of the year. They're ideal for amphibians, the amphibians' life cycle. And here again are some additional graphics from the interpretive signage. We completed this project in November of 2015. And by March of 2016, we were hearing from some of the neighbors that they had counted 2 or 3 families of a Western chorus frog, which is an indicator species, indicating that there had been some successful restoration already underway and new habitat. So that you know, the wetland restoration is a really important piece. We're trying, as so many are in Ohio, to restore nature's kidneys. that have been lost over time. And we rely on a variety of different relationships with regulators to do that, as well as funders. Here's more on the Cullen Park and some of the wildlife and recreation features that are there, and a photo of one of our interpretive signs. Unfortunately, the park does not look like it did when it was first completed, because the city of Toledo has had difficulty with the resources, the financial resources needed to manage the park. There's been some volunteers that have been extraordinarily helpful, but it's going to take more than just a volunteer workforce to help it, particularly in the establishment years of the wetlands. I mentioned the dredging that we're trying to do. Manikin Smith was the first consulting firm to ever beneficially use dredge material on a brownfield in Northwest Ohio. And that's been an important piece of what we're, how we try to work with clients and communities to try to solve multiple problems at once. One being the accumulation of dredge material, and two being the need to restore lands that have lost so much soil and need restoring. It's another shot of some of the best management practices that were installed at Cullen Park and other places. So always trying to restore some of those services that nature provides and that people have removed over the years, trying to bring those back, create habitat, create filtering capacity. And then here's an abandoned gas station in the Sandusky, well, it's in Sandusky, that we helped. We wrote a grant through the abandoned gas station program and helped the city of Sandusky remove abandoned leaking tanks. We completed the environmental site assessments there. So this is what neighbors, residents, and visitors saw when they drove past. Not very inviting, quite an economic disincentive. There's some of the abandoned tanks. We removed those, had the building demoed, and did some of the site civil, and now there is an active business there. I'm speeding up because I just noticed the time. This site, for those of you in Northeast Ohio, might look familiar. An old clothing factory transformed into an experiential learning center. So here again, it's a perfect marriage of science education and science application. Completed all of the environmental site assessments and developed the remedial strategy and oversight. This is what the building looked like inside. You can see a variety of different grants and funding sources were sort of knit together to make this project happen. And there is the Menlo Park Academy. So very much transformed, and there you can see students, photo of students inside the academy. I hope that was helpful to better understand Manikin Smith and how we try to put science into action. And I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you so much, Sally. I am going to let Hallie say a couple of words. She's had quite the adventure tonight, so I'm so glad she's with us now. Hallie.
Hi, everyone. So sorry I was late. Yeah, I was locked out of my office. Somebody thought I had left, so I had to do some stair running to find the security guard. But again, so sorry. I'm here now. Just wanted to reiterate, thank you so much, Sally, for your presentation. Some great information for everyone on kind of the marriage of, the typical side we think of scientists, but then how that can be applied to really, revitalize all of these brownfield kind of sites and sort of make the best of all of that. I'm sure Sally gave a little introduction as I was logging on, but, again, she's the vice president, one of the principals for the Manikin Smith Group, our consulting firm. And she has nearly 30 years of experience in the field, has really done everything, plus has 3 amazing kids. So again, she's done it all. And yes, I hope you enjoyed her presentation. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Hallie. I'm sorry for your scare tonight.
Thanks.
Always an adventure. Again, on behalf of the Ohio Academy of Science, we thank you so much in this amazing partnership that we have with you all. So I am going to turn it over to the CEO of the Ohio Academy of Science, Mr. Mike Voytech, and he is going to introduce our next presenter.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Sally. When I saw the picture of the Joseph and Feist facility, it brought back a lot of memories. That was the first place I bought my first suit. Not that my mom and dad bought for me, but when I was out in the workforce and just starting out. And I do remember the disrepair of that building and seeing Menlo Park. That's absolutely amazing there. It is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Carolyn Watkins. Carolyn serves as Chief of Ohio's EPA's Office of Environmental Education and Administrator of Alternative Fuel Vehicle Conversion Grants, Diesel Emission Reduction Grants, and the Ohio Environmental Education Fund and the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Fund. Together with the Ohio Academy of Science, she administers the Environmental Science and Engineering Scholarship Program, and we're going to meet 3 of those awardees this evening. I'm very excited to hear their talks. Since 2000, that's 22 years of this award, the Ohio EPA has provided over $1 million in scholarships to 389 students representing 51 different colleges and universities throughout Ohio. It's a fantastic program that encourages the development and the mindset to enter the professional career of environmental science and environmental engineering. Carolyn also chairs the awards at State Science Day for the Governor's Award for Excellence in Environmental Protection Research. I know that's something that she really loves to do, and we love having her at State Science Day, and we promise we're working very hard to get back in person so you could actually see the students and be with them and engage with them, at a live event. On behalf of the Academy's Board of Trustees and our Junior Academy Council, thank you for recognizing and for rewarding science education in Ohio, and most especially for environmental research. I'm proud to introduce Ms. Carolyn Watkins.
Thanks very much, Mike. Can you hear me okay? And I've put my slides up. I see Angie nodding, so I'll take it you can see them.
And hear you. You're great.
Mike, you stole my first couple of statistics, but we are celebrating this year because we just have awarded our $1 million in scholarships. And that is something that we are doing with polluter penalty dollars. When Ohio EPA has to levy a fine on someone for a violation, if it's in the air or the water programs, one of those pollution laws being violated, then we put half of that penalty into our environmental education fund. And we do a lot of grants to schools for science supplies. We've funded a lot of things over the years. And what I wanted to talk to you about tonight is a little bit about the scholarship program, and then a little bit about some of the other things we're doing to try to get younger students in the K-12 grades interested in environmental careers. So as you can see here, just over $1 million. We're really pleased that somebody told me in the hall at the agency the other day, said, I didn't know we had 51 colleges and universities in Ohio. There's actually more than that, but we pretty well cover the waterfront. And most of those have been to students that are rising seniors in 4-year programs, but we also are very interested in serving second-year students in the 2-year colleges and institutions around the state. So these are the recipient institutions that have had the number of scholarships. 41 of them have received 10 or fewer, but that's the list of the top scholarship recipients. So we try to make sure that we do a big advertisement every year to all the university faculty that are in my email contacts to make sure they're aware and that their students are aware. So you can see some of the places where they've come from there. We have only awarded 2 scholarships at Ohio's historically Black colleges and universities. And so that is an area where we're going to be doing some extra outreach this year and some extra outreach to try to make sure that we are getting applicants from the 2-year programs. The way that the students break out, 239 of them have been science majors. And you can see there the mix with environmental science and biology, the most numerous, but also quite a few in all of those other sciences that you see listed there. And then we had about 80 engineering majors. And this is something that we're not trying to achieve balance by any means, but we would like to see more applications from engineering students. And then there were 28 other majors that universities have gotten very creative in creating new majors that don't easily fit in any category when we try to lump them together. A lot of good, interesting things going on out there. Ohio EPA also offers internships. These are paid internships for rising seniors and recent graduates. Most of them work in our water quality program. They go out with the folks we call the fish kickers and bug pickers. They are doing macroinvertebrate sampling and fish sampling, fish tissue analysis in all of the streams in Ohio. Under the Clean Water Act, we are required to test all of our streams at least once every 5 years. So our grizzled veterans and our fresh-faced young interns are out in the field from April or May through October, trying to get all of the year's sampling done, and we could not do it without their help. So a lot of our college interns end up later being hired by Ohio EPA or by environmental consulting firms, and we work very hard to make sure that it is a learning experience for the interns and you're not just doing grunt work for the agency. So I would encourage you to look into that. If you are going to be a senior next year, those generally get posted in January and February on the state website. There's a very good video about that program on our website, and I would encourage you to look at that opportunity. I also want to talk a little bit about what we're trying to do with K-12 students. When we talk to middle and high school students and even teachers and career counselors about what do they think of as environmental careers, the typical answers that we get are park ranger and recycling. And those are absolutely honorable professions, but there's a great deal more to it than that. And you saw some good examples of that from the previous speaker with water quality monitoring, drinking and wastewater treatment, hazmat, hazardous material response, environmental planning, all aspects of energy production and use, wetlands restoration, all kinds of things like that. So we have a program now where we have recruited more than 480 professionals all over the state, and they are willing to volunteer their time as environmental career ambassadors. And before the pandemic, we were reaching about 37,000 students annually with presentations and career day events. And even during the pandemic, we pivoted to work virtually. And even with virtual presentations, we still got to 14,000 students last year. And as things are opening up a bit, we're hoping to get back into some of those classrooms, and we're hoping some of those schools will begin holding their career exploration days again. What do our ambassadors do? First, they make classroom presentations. The lower photo there is Dan DeMeo, one of our hazardous waste inspectors out at a middle school in Westerville. The middle is a water treatment plant, and the far one is Sarah Wallace, one of our fish kickers in the surface water division at a school career day event. We also offer shadowing opportunities. There's a little bit of, right now, we're not letting visitors into Ohio EPA's building during the pandemic conditions, but we don't know how that'll change in the coming year. But we've tried to allow students to shadow us when we're doing field work. And some of our ambassadors also mentor young professionals or host field trips at their locations. As we pivoted this year, we found that doing some pre-recorded career chats was a good way for high school students can go online, look at all of these career chats. Each professional answers the same series of questions, and you can see some real variety of folks in environmental science and engineering, and even other fields like environmental law, for example. So I encourage the high school students to go online and look at those. Just a couple of examples. of some of the folks who have posted. Rachel Easter is a bacterial chemist with the City of Dayton Water Treatment Program. Greg Orr is one of our environmental scientists, also a fish kicker. And some of the others, oops, let me back up one there. Tim Lohner with AEP, Brenda Van Cleve, who is a professional engineer, OSU Water Resources Engineer, Tom Frank, ODNR Wildlife Officer. We have quite a bit of variety of folks, so you can see what some of those careers are. We're proud to continue to support State Science Day. As a title sponsor for the event, we provide $10,000 each year to support the event, and then another $2,500 in $100 checks for the Governor's Awards winners in grades 7 through 12. And I'm pleased to say many of our previous Governor's Award winners have gone on to be scholarship recipients. There's some other things that we're doing at the middle and high school level to try to get students interested in environmental careers. At the middle school level, there is an engineering competition called the Future City Competition. Teams must develop a detailed computer map and build a scale model, develop a presentation, and overall work in a team. And we send Ohio's winning team to Washington, D.C. each year during National Engineers Week for the national competition. At the high school level, the local soil and water conservation districts in Ohio sponsor the Envirothon competition. These are teams of 5 high school students, and they are tested on their knowledge of soils, water, wildlife, forests, and topical issue that changes every year. At the elementary level and lower middle school level, we also work with 3 national curricula, Project WET, Project WILD, and Project Learning Tree. Project WET is headquartered in our office at Ohio EPA. Project WILD is, of course, headquartered over at ODNR at the Division of Wildlife. And Project Learning Tree is a nonprofit that works very closely with the Division of Forestry at ODNR. And all 3 of these, we do a lot of workshops for teachers, providing them hands-on outdoor activities they can do with their students. And we've taken our best career activities. For example, in Project WET, we have a great one about all of the careers in the drinking and wastewater, finding it, treating it, distributing it, collecting it, storing it, reusing it, all of the different jobs there. Project WILD has a wonderful career activity where students have to do a mock job interview, and the teachers and the career counselors just love that one because the students get to practice being the interviewer as well as the job candidate. These are online career pathways that are on the Jobs Ohio site and also on the Ohio Department of Education site. And they are designed, the front one shows you a path toward a career. What happens if you stop at high school and go straight to the workforce with a 2-year or a 4-year degree, how much you can make, what kinds of things you can do. So this one is looking at water plant operators all the way up to utilities directors. On the back of each of these career pathways are the classes that you would need to be taking in high school and your first 2 years of college to move toward that career. And when we started, there was only one environmental career on the whole webpage, and that was petroleum engineer. Absolutely an honorable profession, but we thought there should be more. And so we worked very hard, and there are now more than a dozen career pathways that show different related jobs in the same field. Excuse me. We also had a little fun. We created an environmental career bingo game, which you can do either as a bingo or as a mixer, where you pin a job on each student's back and they have to go around and ask each other yes/no questions to try to guess what their career is. And we have 43 different environmental careers in Ohio, and 41 of the pictures are real people, real sites in Ohio. 2 of them I had to use clip art, but the rest of them are real folks doing these jobs. And then I just wanted to mention, we are currently migrating and redesigning. State websites are not anybody's idea of an efficient way to troll for things. And I would encourage, if you get on any of Ohio EPA's web pages, scroll down, because a lot of the good stuff is below the fold. But we are in the process of migrating. I hope that'll be improving that format a little bit. Watch for that information, but the scholarships and careers tab is where it's currently located. And then finally tonight, I asked our director, I told her I would be speaking with you, and asked what she'd like us to talk about. And she wanted me to update you on one of our agency's biggest recent research projects. We, during the pandemic, and it was not easy to do this, this was a heavy lift last year, we sampled more than 1,500 public water systems, serving local communities, schools, childcare facilities, and mobile home parks. And getting out during to do that hands-on sampling, looking for the forever chemicals. There are no current national drinking water standards for PFAS, and that's something that US EPA is in the process of dealing with. But we were very happy with our results. Nearly 94% of them had no detection of PFAS compounds at all. 6% detected very low levels that were well below the health advisory level. And we did have 2 systems with elevated levels. We put them on alternative water supplies with ongoing monitoring. So the current infrastructure bill that is winding its way out of Congress finally includes funding to assist states and local communities with PFAS cleanup. And US EPA is going to be setting new drinking water standards for these chemicals, and they will be classified as hazardous under CERCLA over the next 2 years. So there's a big debate going on in Congress in terms of Superfund liability and what that will mean. Particularly, a lot of airport operators are concerned because of the firefighting foams that they've been using for years. Our drinking wastewater treatment plants are concerned because of the way that we have been applying to farm fields where wastewater treatment plant residues are spread. And if there was measurable or even detectable amounts of PFAS in those locations. So a lot more to come in this area, but we've been ahead of most other states. There's only a handful of states that have done this level of investigation of their public water supplies. So we're pleased to be working on that, and the director wanted to make sure you were aware of that effort that we're doing. And I will stop there and turn it back to Mike.
Hi, Carolyn. Thank you so much for your presentation tonight. And I really think that the work that the EPA is doing, especially here in the state of Ohio, is commendable. And so thank you very much on behalf of the entire organization and the entire state. We thank you for your commitment to keeping all of us safe and healthy. So without further ado, I have had a chance to get to know a few of our EPA scholarship winners. And in years past, they've kind of received their scholarship and then gone off to do all of the amazing things that they do. But I didn't let them escape this year. I really wanted a chance to showcase the work that these amazing young men and women are doing, not only in the state of Ohio, but around the world. And the 3 that you're going to hear present their most recent research and findings are simply just mind-blowing. So I think back 20 some years ago in college, and I felt that I was an academic, but I don't know, they just impressed me so much. So the first student that we're going to hear from tonight is Colin Lester. Colin is a student at The Ohio State University, and he is majoring in environmental engineering. His research that he is going to talk with you all about this evening deals with the area of coastal engineering and flood protection systems. As someone who loves to go to the beach every summer, I found his research absolutely fascinating. So Colin, I'm going to turn it over to you and go ahead and let you share your project with all of us. And thank you so much again.
There we go. I think I got it. Now my slideshow presentation should be coming through clear. Is that okay?
Nope, I see your weekend to-do list.
Oh, okay, geez. Let's see here.
which is awesome. He's going to be very busy in academics. That would not have been my weekend to-do list in college. So I commend you. All right.
Geez, let's see which one it is here. Okay. Is it coming through now?
Now you're good to go.
Okay, great, great. So I'm working a few different screens here. You'd think I'd have this down after the virtual experience, right?
Nope. It's a learning process every day. You are fine. You are among friends.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today, and to those that put this event together. I will be discussing some recent research efforts in collaboration with the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering and Geodetic Science at Ohio State. Specifically, we'll be looking at the analysis of fluid flow over flood protection systems. Let's take a step back and look at why it's important, using the infamous Hurricane Katrina as an example. This tropical cyclone event occurred in the 2005 Atlantic hurricane season and is one of the costliest natural disasters in the history of the United States, both in terms of lives lost and money. At least 1,836 people lost their lives, the deadliest United States hurricane since 1928. Total property damage was estimated at $81 billion. Among recorded Atlantic hurricanes, it was the sixth strongest overall. This comes as no surprise, since a relatively simple calculation for a project in our water resources engineering class showed the increasing intensity and decreasing return times of such powerful events. I should note that that analysis was performed using precipitation data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration as a gauging mechanism. I'd also like to take a second to acknowledge the sheer size of this tropical event. This image does us a justice by being able to see it relative to the size of Mexico, looking to be more than twice the surface area of Florida in terms of cloud cover alone. But there's a lot more that happens in a tropical cyclone event than a few cumulonimbus clouds hanging around. A tropical cyclone brings pressure differences that create one of the most destructive natural disasters that humanity can handle. One reasonable thing to ask is, how can we help? Well, we can use tools at our disposal to help solve such complicated problems in a timely manner as to allow the opportunity for countermeasures against these events. As far as my personal contribution goes, I'll be diving into one of those tools, OpenFOAM, which is one of the CFD tools we have access to. Another one that was developed is DGSWEM, which can develop a similar model and be used to draw comparisons with. But more on that in one moment. You may have heard me mention CFD, which isn't something everyone uses at the water cooler to stimulate a pleasant conversation, unless you're a bit of a nerd like yours truly. So what is CFD? CFD is a branch of fluid mechanics that uses numerical analysis and data structures to analyze and solve problems that involve fluid flows. Well, okay, I hope that helps. What might be more useful is looking at the image on the left, where the result of said analyses are displayed. An interesting note about this image is that different sets of equations were solved for the same scenario, resulting in different data output as to what would occur thereafter. While one of these simulations may be more accurate than another, it could take vastly more time to compute. So what if the less accurate solution will do the job? Finding the balance between accuracy and practicality is the driving force for this project. OpenFOAM and DGSWEM are both examples of such computational tools, each offering their own advantages. OpenFOAM can solve much more specific governing laws of fluid motion, while DGSWEM can solve simplified equations much faster. At one point this past summer, we ran the same scenario on both programs. OpenFOAM completed the computation in 1.5 hours, while the DGSWEM program took under 2 minutes. For the record, OpenFOAM also ran on my 8-year-old machine that is a relic of a bygone era, so I'm sure that was a factor. The applications of CFD are plentiful. Why, here we can see if our handy-dandy state-of-the-art war machine can properly handle Mach 7. Other times, we may want to see the way weather behaves. I guess it all depends on what you want to focus on. There are a lot of applications for modeling the environment as well, but we'll be focusing on hurricane storm surges. Storm surges are naturally occurring events that are caused by changes in the surrounding environment. As one can imagine, a hurricane has the tendency to generate some turmoil, which in turn causes an incoming rise in water levels due to pressure differences in the air. Where there's a pressure difference in a fluid, there's bound to be flow. Unfortunately, this flow happens to be pushed into the districts and domiciles of decent people. As such, we have developed coastal protection systems to ward off these potential disasters. Here is an image of said flood protection system, where a flood wall is being added to an already elevated topography to be more effective. We don't always have additional flood walls laying around. Sometimes weather events bring more than anticipated levels of storm surge water, causing barrier overtopping, as is seen in the image here. While we've developed predictions of fluid flow in such circumstances, they are in their infancy and in need of refinement. Here we have the approximations within DG-SWEM using the Weir formulas that parses its solutions based on opposing water levels the barrier lies between. Classifying the scenario allows us to predict fluid flow based on case-specific flow equations with known values. This method, utilized by Dr. Dylan Wood, a postdoc at Notre Dame and former PhD student at Ohio State, is computationally inexpensive, allowing us to forecast the effects of storm surge from tropical cyclone events and respond quickly to prevent damage to our people, places, and things. There is curiosity about the accuracy of this approach due to its simplification. One way we can verify or improve this method is compare it with a CFD tool with more in-depth methods, setting up similar scenarios and comparing results. Furthermore, how can those results be processed to implement improvements to the DG-SWEM predictions, thus allowing us to have our cake and eat it too, so to speak? With this in mind, we can turn our attention towards our other tool and beginning of my contributions. We will be taking a look at the tool of comparison, OpenFOAM. OpenFOAM is the free open source CFD software developed primarily by OpenCFD Limited since 2004. It has a large user base across most areas of engineering and science, from both commercial and academic organizations. OpenFOAM has an extensive range of features to solve anything from complex fluid flows involving chemical reactions, turbulence and heat transfer, to acoustics, solid mechanics, and electromagnetics. We'll be using a solver called InterFOAM, which is a multi-phase solver that uses a volume phase fraction approach to solving Navier-Stokes flow equations, assuming two incompressible, isothermal, immiscible fluids. Basically, our fluid is assumed to be incompressible, all at the same temperature, and they do not dissolve into one another homogeneously. Let's talk for a moment how one makes use of this tool for our specific set of circumstances. We'll begin by setting up our domain. Here we have a body of water, shown in red, with a trapezoidal barrier with 45-degree slopes. The exact dimensions were selected based on levee geometry comparable to that of New Orleans, Louisiana. The area in blue signifies air. We want to begin by constructing a mesh that essentially specifies where we want to make evaluations and set up boundary conditions. In this case, OpenFOAM's block mesh function was employed. This method works by establishing points in space and parsing it into equally divided cells within what are called blocks. More accurately, these six-sided prisms are called into space at the designer's preference. In this case, we have a trapezoidal barrier located between two bodies of water, the structure of which is conducive to our goal of replicating a storm surge scenario. After the stage has been set, the walls of the geometry can be given user-specific values based on their own preferences. In this case, we wanted empty sides of a simulation, as replicating fluid flow over a levee structure requires only solving equations in 2 dimensions, as there are no causes for fluid movement in the 3rd dimension with our selected analysis. That, oddly enough, is part of the reason our approach is used, as more determination of solution equals more time to compute. The ceiling of the model, for lack of better terms, is one that allows air to move freely throughout the model, and any fluid returning back to the model would be only comprised of air. We also want to replicate the true conditions of the scenario by specifying the barrier as a wall. This wall behaves the way it would with a fluid by inputting preferred solutions for pressure and velocity in the input of our boundary conditions. We also have an inlet that produces a second-order Stokes wave when next to a pre-existing body of water, as is applied to the model. Additionally, we have an outlet of sorts that absorbs any elevation difference relative to the initial simulation conditions on the opposing side of the barrier. This reduces the computation that would occur as a result of a wave crashing into a hard wall. Such calculations in a model would be exhausting computational capacity for the reward of nothing. Employing OpenFOAM's built-in functions allows us to perform our accurate calculations in less time.
Okay.
Of course, it's all good. Of course, what's a simulation beyond a way of producing images of fluid flow that one can staple to the fridge for any guests to see? OpenFOAM has ways of collecting data at specified points in space. In our case, lines of evaluation were placed at locations of interest, mainly the inlet where the wave was produced and the interaction at the front and back of the trapezoidal barrier. Using known values of phase fraction percentages of the cells, in addition to velocity readouts, we can calculate the flow rate. This is because we know our simulation's depth, and we can determine the column height of water from phase fraction values. We have 2 dimensions of space and a carefully placed velocity vector reading across the resulting cross-sectional plane. Thus, we have a reading of instantaneous flow rate. With these kinds of analyses, we can process our results and inquire further about what the data says. Fortunately, this can be completed in MATLAB and further evaluated. As an example, here is a case where I had plotted the water level as a function of time, allowing the flow rate to be calculated from the same independent variable of time. The flow rate calculation and water height were then used to determine something called the discharge coefficient, which is a coefficient used in fluid flow approximations. One exciting find was the level of precision of the data on the bottom. That's because the simulation in OpenFOAM that solves only flow equations was able to validate the consistency of the discharge coefficient formulas as a function of the geometry of the barrier, which are derived from empirical data alone. That's a bit of a mouthful, but it's really neat to see the completion of a technically incomplete numerical theory match up to our experimentally determined equations from previous scientists. Another endeavor of the summertime was retrieving the empirical data and performing evaluations of that data. With a combination of a scatter plot of the data from a 1920 United States Geological Survey field study and Grab-it tool in MATLAB, regression lines could be fit to data to produce flow equations that can then be implemented into our models. In our case, a second-order polynomial achieved R-squared values above 0.9, bar one data set out of the 16 evaluated. For that one, a cubic function can be called in if needed. Thus, our best fit line is acceptable for our applications. The reason that this is a point of emphasis is because higher orders of polynomials require additional loops within the data fitting calculations. We don't exactly want to call in the Fourier series if simpler methods can do the job. This particular data set contained different ratios of slopes on the side of a trapezoidal barrier and the way it influenced barrier overtopping flow values. One set of data contains a more extensive variety of fluid barrier interactions, completed by a gentleman named Bazin in the late 1800s. As one could guess, his original data sets are hard to come by. Fortunately, a portion of that data was made available for download through Google Scholar's online repository of scanned texts, allowing for similar processing from the gold standard of data that Bazin's experiments are for this specific scenario. There were some other data sources that were investigated from the transactions of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Oddly enough, a portion of the volumes was available in the bottom of West 18th Library, available for rental and shown here. The two on the top of the image here are from 1932 and 1900, while the one on the bottom is from 1883. These were sought out for entries where engineers and scientists of the past have produced data and stored it. We are able to scan these documents and process the data in ways that it has yet to be evaluated. This data can be evaluated for optimal improvements into our pre-existing modeling methods. As far as next steps go, improvements into the DG SWIM model can then play their part in preparing for the potentially disastrous natural events that hurricanes are. If we know how to model the coastal flooding effects of hurricanes, we can help prevent the damage. Perhaps one day we can even have variable controlled smart systems of drainage to avoid relocating entire cities that otherwise couldn't sustain the effects of increasing climate change. Lastly, some expressions of gratitude, as no one is an island. Thank you to the NSF for funding the overall project, and thank you to the CEGE Department and College of Engineering at Ohio State for providing the opportunity to conduct the research on a full stomach. I definitely want to express gratitude for the efforts of the folks at the Computational Hydraulics and Informatics Laboratory that have helped, primarily Dr. Dylan Wood over at Notre Dame and Professor Ethan Kabako at Ohio State. Despite his Penn State University roots, we did settle that matter a little under 2 weeks ago, didn't we? And there's the scoreboard. Jokes aside, I had a lot of fun with this experience, and I hope it was both enjoyable and educational. Are there any questions that someone may have?
I don't hear any questions or see anything in the chat, but Colin, that was awesome. We're all so very proud of you and cannot wait to see where your adventures lead you in the future. I hope that you keep in touch. We would love to have you come present at our annual meeting at the University of Findlay in April, if you are willing to do that and share your adventures even more with another audience. So again, on behalf of the Academy, we want to thank you so much for your time and your efforts, and we wish you the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you so much.
Up next is Miss Julia Glenn. And Julia is excitingly finishing up her work at the University of Cincinnati, and she will be applying to graduate programs. But while she's doing that, she has accepted a position at the Cincinnati Zoo. I will say that this was my daughter's favorite presentation because of all of the animals, and I think she wants to go see Julia at the zoo. So without further ado, I'd like you all to give a warm welcome to Miss Julia Glenn.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here. Perfect. I hope you can see that well. So hello, everyone. My name is Julia Glenn. Thank you very much for the introduction. Your daughter, and you are welcome to come anytime to the zoo. We would love to have you. So I'm another honored recipient of the 2021 Ohio EPA Scholarship. And I want to say a big thank you to the Ohio Academy of Sciences for inviting me and the other students to share some of our current studies. So as you might guess from the title, I will be virtually welcoming you into the jungle with me as I share my experience from this past summer conducting research in the Amazon rainforest. So to get into it, first I'll give a quick background about me, then I'll dive into the story of how I actually ended up in the Amazon rainforest, a few memorable jungle experiences, and of course, the process of conducting my first ever research project, finally ending with what's next for me. So briefly about me, I was born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky, known as the horse capital of the world. This is actually a true part of my identity, as my family has owned and run a small horse tack equipment and handmade leather goods store since the late 1960s, where you can still find my 90-year-old grandmother coming to work every week alongside my mom, dad, and cousin. So I'm certainly proud of my Kentucky roots. Fast forward to today, like mentioned, I am just weeks away from graduating from the University of Cincinnati after a great 4.5 years. Yay. I will receive my bachelor's in both environmental studies and urban studies as well as a minor in geography and a certificate in GIS. So with that being said, long story short, I am passionate about using environmental geography for global conservation, whether through wildlife conservation, ecosystem restoration, climate change mitigation, or reduction of human-wildlife conflict. Along my academic journey as well, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to be a co-op intern at the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden, where I still am today and loving what I do. I started in the facilities department, and then I became part-time as their sustainability projects coordinator. And now just this month, like mentioned, I have accepted a full-time offer to work with the administration department of the zoo as the strategic projects manager. So my background aside, the real question is, where did I go this summer? And the answer is Peru. This was my first summer off of classes in a few years, and I've been wanting real scientific research experience in the field for a long time. So I started looking online, not necessarily with a destination in mind, just looking for an organization that hosted research interns. And eventually I got in contact with the kind people of Hoja Nueva, an organization located in the Peruvian Amazon forest, where I ended up flying almost 4,000 miles from home and living in the jungle for 3 months. So this is a quick snapshot of the organization showing the lodge here. Hoja Nueva is a nonprofit research and wildlife rescue and rehabilitation center. It's been running for about 6 years now. And the list here shows all the animals we were taking care of at the site this summer. So it's very busy taking care of the animals from morning to night, and along with all the research activities we did. So everything from 12 dogs at one point, which was great, 6 peccaries, 7 endangered tortoises, and 5 carnivorous cats, and more. So I want to give a little taste of the jungle life and what I call just jungle things. So I'll run through these quickly, starting from the top. So we were often macheteing through the middle of the dense growth forest. Then we would come out of, say, an 8-hour hike covered in mud, sweaty bug spray, and palm spikes. When working in downtime, it was normal to have a fan on your face and a cup of coffee on the other hand. And sometimes bathing in the creek was warmer than the ice cold showers at the lodge. Seeing a tarantula in the wild for the first time, or spiders hatching behind your sink, or a spider hanging on the toilet paper roll waiting for you to come around, and my personal record of a 6-inch long wandering spider. We also would follow the footprints of predators like jaguars and pumas, whether on the riverbanks or in the middle of the forest. And here I'm also taking a closer look at some of the hares of prey that we would find in scat. Also, sadly, I witnessed the destruction of the forest as well due to logging demands. So we would see large roads created by logging trucks in the middle of the forest, or we would see a large, usually ancient and rare tree cut down and cut into lumber. We would also come across many caimans, snakes, and frogs on almost every night walk that we would take. And we swam in the river. Yes, it is safe enough. Don't tell my grandma. We played volleyball almost every day to stay active and have fun. I was able to taste the fresh cacao fruit where our chocolate comes from. And of course, saw lots of the massive tree species of the forest. And this picture, we've just in comparison to the roots. And finally, preparing gourmet salads for the tortoises and watching them eat like it was primetime entertainment, because it was so adorable. We're also making our own wood chips for the compost toilet by chopping up rotting logs. Sometimes we would hang out in the local community store when we would cross the river. And on that note, we would carry every single grocery that we and our animals consumed 10 minutes across the river on boat and then 20 minutes in backpacks. It's a great workout. So that was just a taste. And of course, part of the journey was to explore, learn, and have fun. But also a big part of the journey was work. So a lot of my downtime was spent reading literature, typing my project outline, and building on my GIS file. And with the help of the amazing guidance from the research team at the lodge, I eventually decided on a project title, which is Evaluating Permeability of a Mixed-Use Landscape in Peruvian Lowland Amazon Rainforest. So what does that mean? We can break some of it down. So what is permeability? Here is the Nature Conservancy's definition, but to say it simply, Permeability looks at how well or not well organisms move through and around a landscape. Although the concept of permeability is related to connectivity, it goes beyond just looking at the ability to move from point A to point B. And it instead looks at the barriers of the landscape, the natural cover, and the arrangement of land uses. And the map on the right is just an example of how tigers move through central India. Mixed use, what is a mixed use landscape? It is exactly what it sounds like. It refers to an area or landscape that is arranged by more than one type of use, either formally like in a city or informally like in the jungle. And mixed use usually implies that it is used or managed by humans. For quick reference on the map, it is a satellite view of my project site, which spans about 10 square miles. And now I'll show a closer look at what those different land uses look like in the area. So along Las Piedras River, where my project was conducted, there were three major types of land use. Logging, which I mentioned is usually visible by cleared roads on satellite view, or obviously on the ground by roads. Farming was usually small scale from 10 to 50 acres and mostly growing cacao or sometimes other fruits like papaya, mango, or citrus. And finally, another land use type, which was mainly in my project site, our organization that we were staying at, Hoja Nueva, as a nonprofit that owns land for conservation. As these are three very different land uses, it is a given that there will be different types of barriers, including human shelters, but more crucially, the roads created by logging trucks and the harsh edges of farms. So looking at the effect of these human barriers in relation to the permeability of the landscape for animals is the core purpose of my project. So once again, here's the project title, Evaluating the Permeability of a Mixed-Use Landscape. So now we know what that means. The question is, why am I doing it and why is it important? First of all, on a personal level, I have always preferred looking at things from a systems design point of view. So rather than specializing in one species or population, I am interested in looking at the environment from a landscape level or a bird's eye view to learn about the systems functioning within it. Second, there has been very little research published out of this region, and it is one of Peru's largest still intact yet unprotected rainforests, so it's very important. And third, looking at human effects on wildlife is and always will be important. As seen in the remote jungle to the big cities and all over the world, landscape fragmentation by human development disrupts natural ecological processes and impedes the ability of many species to respond, move, or adapt to changes. That's why the emerging field of landscape ecology is more critical now than ever before as we consider the record-breaking extinction rate of organisms and habitats around the world, the rate of urbanization continuing to skyrocket, and as we see and feel the increasing effects of climate change. So with the case made of why this is important, how did I actually do it? I split my project into three parts, briefly listed here, and I'll dive into them on the following slides. The first part was ground truth mapping, in total, walking 45 miles back and forth all over the project site to create as comprehensive of a base map as possible. The second part was collecting the empirical animal movement data with, spoiler alert, camera traps. And the third part was calculating the theoretical or expected permeability of the landscape using open source data and GIS. Finally, the results from part 2 and 3 are overlaid together and compared to analyze the effects. So the first part got started as soon as I arrived, which was ground truth mapping. Because there were literally no existing maps of this specific area, besides satellite imagery and government leased parcel records, I had to start from scratch. So in this case, ground truth mapping meant actually walking and collecting data boots on the ground style, rather than relying on satellite imagery. So I put 3 almost identical pictures on this slide to show that this is actually what I looked like most of the time when we were out walking for data collection. I'm not texting, if that were even possible in the jungle, but I'm taking notes on my phone and using a data collection app called QField, as well as a handheld Garmin GPS. Between these 2 devices and a measuring tape, our walks would be automatically tracked on the GPS. I could add points wherever we would see intersections or trailheads to explore later, evidence of logging like a freshly cut tree, or farm shelter, etc. So I would also measure the width of the different trail types we saw to later test if the width had any effect on animal movement. So this process was actually a lot of fun, not only because who doesn't love a stroll in the rainforest, but because it actually felt like a true adventure, as we were literally just finding as many trailheads as we could and walking them as far as they would go. And then it almost felt like a real life puzzle as we would get back to the lodge and I could plug in the GPS and add all the newly discovered trails to the map. Here's a closer look at the mapping process. The map on the left is before any trails were added, and it just shows that the green polygons are the parcels of land owned by the host organization, Hoja Nueva, and the orange polygons are farm boundaries that we could see from satellite. Then, after walking as much of the area as possible, the map in the middle shows all the existing trails and roads. And the snapshot on the right just shows what the QField app looks like on my phone. And it integrates with QGIS, which is the world's top free GIS software. So that was really convenient to be able to sync data from my phone to my computer. So for part 2 of the project, as I said earlier as a spoiler alert, camera trapping was the core method of data collection for my project, and it also took the most time and energy. So if I wasn't caught looking down at my phone or GPS recording data, you could definitely catch me setting up camera traps and frequently being hoisted into the air by some generous colleagues that were on so-called ladder duty. Camera traps are a widely used and accurate method of research for animals without disturbing them. Unlike the reptile and amphibian researchers that were at the lodge, they got to study the species up close on every night walk we would take. But mammal researchers must rely on tools like cameras to actually see, identify, and track species. So for my project, I'm relying on the cameras to capture a variety of species of mainly mammals and some ground-dwelling birds. I'll share some of those in the next slide. My project ended up using 27 camera stations. However, I helped the research team set up over 100 individual cameras over the summer. The other researchers at the lodge were looking at a much larger land area, and they were also looking at both arboreal and terrestrial camera data. As you can see in the pictures, I was setting up arboreal cameras that were about 3 meters or 10 feet high in the trees, which would capture species such as monkeys, margays, birds, and more. However, I did not use any arboreal data in my project. I was just focusing on terrestrial animals. So speaking of terrestrial, this is what those cameras looked like only a foot or a foot and a half off the ground. We used Browning brand cameras, which are often used for either hunting or research purposes. In our area of the forest, we had to ensure extra time and effort was given to make sure that each camera was very well hidden. Based on years of experience, the research team knows that other people living or working in the forest don't necessarily like active cameras, whether they just don't want to be recorded or they're doing something illegal like logging. Many cameras have been stolen or destroyed, and that adds up. Although these pictures look like bad news, we actually successfully hid over 100 cameras this season. And this one shown is the only one that got destroyed by a logging truck, which took down a tree alongside a logging road. The cameras record 10-second videos triggered by motion up to 80 feet away. And in our study, they were set up for 2.5 months, and data will be manually transferred from the SD card inside each camera. The cameras for my project were set up from July to September, and the data is currently being gathered and cleaned before it is sent to me. So I wish I had this summer's captures to share with you at the moment. I'm very anxious to see them too. But for now, I'll share last season's best captures. So even though setting up camera grids over such a large area was absolutely exhausting, and I wondered how researchers could maintain the motivation to do it year after year, the true treasure and reward of this work is the results of the footage. So here you can see some of the coolest animals captured in our area. From top to bottom and left to right, it is a coati, a tapir, a puma, a family of peccaries, an ocelot, and a tyra. And the list on the left is a bit more comprehensive of all the mammals I expect to see, as well as the 2 ground-dwelling birds at the bottom. And it's just really cool to see what's walking around the same area as you, such as seeing a family of jaguars walking on the same trail as you just hours after you see yourself. So it is really a treasure to see what you find. So there is a method to our madness of setting up so many cameras in the middle of the jungle. Camera trapping for research is often done in the formation of a grid where each cell is the same area and each cell has one camera station. As you can see on the map of my study area, there are 29 grid cells, and each grid cell contains one camera, which are the yellow dots. As you can also see, not all the cameras fall perfectly within the center of the grid cells, and this is just a classic lesson for me in how field research, especially in the middle of the jungle, can only go so close to plan. For example, there is a grid cell without a camera, number 18, and the truth is that's actually in the middle of very dense growth forest. And somehow we were able to get to the cameras around it, number 13 and 23, but those required hitting the trail at 7 a.m. and macheting as hard and fast as possible to get in and out by dark at 5 p.m. So sometimes it's just not possible to get everything perfect. So unfortunately, for anyone with OCD, number 18 is left blank. But this grid is the base map for plugging in the data when we receive it from the cameras. And in my project, the empirical permeability will be indicated by the capture frequency rate, which is a metric used in camera trap research, which simply means how often a species is caught on camera. So for part 3 of the project, now that I've returned from the field, I am currently working on the theoretical permeability calculations while waiting for the empirical camera data. Shown here is the basic equation I decided on for theoretical permeability, which is habitat quality minus human impact. For time's sake, I put the variables broken down here more. All of the data from the habitat quality is sourced from online, mainly from USGS Earth Explorer, and the variables for the human impact are all sourced empirically from the field. All of these variables are quantified and then scaled to each other on a 0 to 100 scale using Excel so that they can just be plugged right into the equation and output one value for each grid cell, which will then be symbolized on the map using a graduated color ramp. So once I receive the the camera data for the empirical results, I will symbolize it in the same way. And the graphic on the slide here is just an example of what the stacked grid comparison would look like. And it will most likely be visually noticeable whether the theoretical and the empirical results match or not. But to be technical, I can also accept or reject the hypothesis that grid cells with higher human impact values will have a lower capture frequency rate of animals. Finally, I can pose further research questions about this topic. For example, one that I've already been pondering is, should the camera data be broken into different species or functionality groups? Because, for example, cats are known to and might actually use human trails for movement, whereas small prey species might completely avoid human barriers. So these maps would look different. So that is the full explanation of my project from top to bottom. But as you can see, I still have some number crunching and analysis to do in the coming weeks before it's officially final. With that being said, I'll wrap up with a view of what's ahead. So like I mentioned, where am I now? I'm about to graduate in December. And this semester, I've also been working with an advisor to write my project paper and prepare for publication, hopefully early next year, as long as all the data comes through well. And where am I headed? Like mentioned, I plan to apply for graduate programs related to GIS and geospatial sciences. And starting in just a few weeks officially, I will go full-time as the strategic projects manager with the Cincinnati Zoo, where no matter what the task at hand, I love working for the best zoo in the country, and I have the pleasure of working alongside passionate conservationists, educators, and advocates, and of course, hundreds of species from around the world. So with this, I'll wrap up with my favorite quote, and please reach out if you want to talk to more. And thank you all so much for listening, and a big thank you to Ohio Academy of Sciences for organizing this event and supporting students. Thanks.
Julia, I think that you have some fans in the chat, and one of the questions earlier was what was a peccary, and then we saw the pictures, so I think we got that question answered. But I think you definitely have a fan club going, so we are definitely interested in helping you get published in the Ohio Journal of Science. And I think I emailed that to you today. So please keep in touch to connect with us so that we can get you published.
One quick question. First of all, fabulous job, Julia. One quick question. Where on earth did you get the courage to go swim in the river in the Amazon? I mean, seriously, I was scared for you in the picture during the presentation. Where did you get the nerve to do that?
Great question. You know, there was a lot of interns there, and it gets really hot there in the summer, and they're like, there's this great waterfall down the river that you would really just love. So everyone was like, it's fine, we've done it 100 times before, and it really did end up being a beautiful day. But that's not to say there's not things to be careful for in the jungle. Like I said, we're always covered in bug spray any other time of day. Don't go out in short sleeves or shorts, but we stayed careful. And like I said, just don't tell my grandma, because she was like, you went swimming. So thank you all very much. I appreciate all the comments. I'll go read through them, and thanks for the time.
Thank you, Julia. And our last amazing presenter tonight is Mackenzie Rutherford. And Mackenzie is a senior at Miami University. She's majoring, which I think this is so cool, in geology with a creative writing minor. She's incredibly involved on campus, and I'm so excited to introduce you all to Mackenzie's research regarding the flooding and maintaining the flood water. I know I'm totally just not doing a great job with this, but I'm going to let you talk about your research, Mackenzie.
Awesome. If I can just get it in presentation mode. Okay, well, I didn't get to go somewhere quite as cool as another country, but I did get to spend my summer in Wyoming and Montana having my field camp experience. And so I found this presentation a fantastic opportunity to use all of the beautiful pictures that I took while I was there in the background of my slides. So I hope you all enjoy those. So yes, my name is Mackenzie Rutherford. A lot of my peers call me Ruthie. I'm a senior at Miami University, majoring in geology with a double minor in creative writing and global perspectives on sustainability. And today I'm going to be talking to you about a lot of things that I'm involved with on campus. I do multiple research projects at the same time, so I will be hitting them in not quite as much detail, but giving you a general idea of what each of those are. So I've actually been working as a mineralogy undergraduate assistant for 2 years now after I took the class my sophomore year. Since then, I have taken both powder X-ray diffraction and also single crystal analysis or advanced mineralogy. So I do have a heavy background in mineralogy. I'm also on Miami University Sustainability Council, which makes an effort to advocate for sustainable efforts on campus and educate the general population about what's going on, not just on campus, but also in the world. I was also in Miami's Unlearning Racism in the Geosciences, also known as URGE pod. I was an undergraduate representative, which has inspired me, as you will see later, to do a lot more with that. I'm also the Miami University Geological Society Vice President. I created a program, I will also talk about this later, called Global Education Outreach for Diversifying the Earth Sciences, called GEODS. I'm the president and creator. We are currently working on the website for that. And as a result for creating this program, I recently received the Expanding Representation in Geosciences Award at the Geological Society of America conference in Portland, Oregon. So that was really cool. I'm also a designer of the Myaamia Sustainability and Ethnobotanical Garden. And the research I've been doing over the past 3 years has ranged greatly. I've done things with optical anomalies in crystals, flattened garnet inclusions, mineralogy of the Hickstone breccia located in the Kentucky, Illinois fluorspar district. And currently, I am doing a lot with the effect of climate change and how it has increased the frequency of extreme precipitation events that we're seeing in Ohio in particular, and how to improve diversity in the geosciences and the geoscience curriculum in high schools. So first, I just wanted to touch on my mineralogy background and just recognize the wonderful skills that I've gotten. I really love mineralogy. I really enjoyed learning about it and taking the classes in it, and that's why I did research in it for 2 years. I've done things that have enhanced my skills in optical microscopy, mineral identification, phase identification, cathodoluminescence, powder X-ray diffraction, and I've gotten a lot of scientific publications and presentations at places like the Rochester Mineral Symposium, our geological presentations in our department at Myaamia, our undergraduate research forum, and I also received the undergraduate research award with my partner Madeline Merchlin last year for our project on the Higgs Dome. And the reason I wanted to touch on this is just to recognize that there's a lot of opportunities in mineralogy to do things that are very environmentally oriented that I feel like people don't realize. So I have a picture here of one of my X-ray powder diffraction samples of one of the slides from Higgs Dome. And the reason I wanted to put this is how beneficial it is to understand X-ray diffraction. And I say this because something that has greatly affected all of us recently has been COVID-19. And by being able to crystallize the structure of the COVID-19 structure, we can then take that and put it in an X-ray diffractometer and get a reading off of it. And as a result, we're able to solve the structure of that, and that would be in a single crystal machine. But I just wanted to recognize like what you can do with mineralogy. The only reason that I decided to take a different path was because I'm a very people-oriented person, and I wanted to do something that was more like community-based and something that's like more rooted in having an effect on the community. So yeah, I wanted that more people interaction, and so I'm finding projects that are doing that instead. So recently, I've been reading a lot of articles about the increasing extreme precipitation events that we are seeing in Ohio. And that's what this diagram here on the right is showing you. Just to give you a general idea, basically through time, we are seeing as a result of climate change that we have these extreme precipitation events. And the way we define an extreme precipitation event is that an annual number of days with precipitation of 2 inches or more. So basically 2 inches or more of rain within a number of hours or in a day, that is an extreme precipitation event. And as a result, locally at Miami University, we are doing a case study on a storm that occurred on June 3rd. And this graph here basically just shows you how much rain we received. It was just under 2 inches, so technically it doesn't classify as an extreme precipitation event. However, we're just using it because it's a very relevant time period. It's really easy to collect data on it right now and gain photos. And the purpose of us doing this is that we're working with the City of Oxford, the University Climate Task Force, and campus physical facilities to analyze the impact that these extreme precipitation events have on infrastructure, because we're hoping that we can advocate for, instead of using our resources to fix the damage done by these events, to instead investing in fixing climate change locally. So yeah, that's kind of the start of the project. Here are some pictures of this particular case study. On the left, you can see an area of downtown Oxford that was extremely flooded on the day. And then the picture on the right is a local building on campus called Pearson Hall, which is the biology building. But what's interesting about this picture is this picture was only taken like a month ago. I took this about a month ago in the building. Most of these damages have still not been taken care of. So it's not just a matter of fixing it, it's also the time that it's taking to fix it. And this building was very recently renovated. It's a beautiful building, but now almost half of the basement looks like this. So yeah, that's just gives you an idea kind of what we're going for, and making that argument to instead put our resources towards fixing climate change. My next project I'm working on currently, which I'm really excited about, is the Myaamia demonstration garden. So for those who are not familiar with Miami University, our university is located on the lands of the Myaamia indigenous peoples, which are mainly found in Oklahoma now. And so we actually have a relationship with the Myaamia tribe, and we have a Myaamia center on campus. And so this image here on the left is their heritage symbol, in which I'm completely going to butcher this word, but it's called Niptamwankni, something like that. But what that translates to is learning together, and that builds that relationship between the Myaamia tribe and Miami University, and educating our students about what it means, and just educating them about the culture as well. And so the purpose of this garden that we are creating right now, is that it is going to be a way to highlight how the Myaamia tribe is both sustainable, and also educate people about the botany and the ethnobotanical part, as in like the cultural uses of these plants. So it's a really great opportunity for students of different backgrounds to come together and learn about different aspects. And so I'm actually the lead designer. There were a lot more designs than this. I probably had about 8 designs in total. And based on feedback with working with the Myaamia Center, and also working with physical facilities to determine the area and space that this garden will be going under. So far, these are the most optimal designs. I did not put the Myaamia translation for the words here, but one thing we'll be focusing on, and one thing I'm designing right now, is the signage that's going in the garden. And that signage is actually going to highlight the Myaamia language. So it's an effort for language revitalization as well. So yeah, it's a really great opportunity for many different things and for many different people on the university to come together and learn about a different aspect of botany that people don't really think about. So yeah, I'm very excited, and we just received the news today that next week we will start the removal of the sod where the garden will be going. And next spring, we'll start the installation of the garden. So very exciting, and we're working on the name with the Myaamia Center as well. So my next big project, as I mentioned, Unlearning Racism in the Geosciences. So this program was a national effort all across the country during COVID. And the purpose was to address the lack of diversity that we see in the geosciences. It's a huge issue. And as we probably all know, geology and the earth sciences in particular were historically pursued by white men as a hobby. And we're still seeing the repercussions of that today. We see a really high lack of diversity in the geosciences. And so our URGE pod at Miami asked ourselves, why are we seeing that? Like, what can we do to better diversify them? And that kind of led to a discussion that I pointed out that I personally didn't even realize that geology or the earth sciences or sustainability was even an opportunity for a career until I got to college. Because, in particular, in Ohio, you're not required to learn about it in the curriculum in high school at all. In fact, I think the last time that they have to look at anything in the curriculum is in 8th grade about tectonics, and maybe in 6th grade, where they learn about the basic sedimentary, metamorphic, and igneous rocks. So when people think geology, all they think about is rocks, and that is just not the case, as we all know. So as a result, I created a program called GEODS, which stands for Global Education Outreach for Diversifying the Earth Sciences. So this semester, we have been focusing on creating a online program that teachers can use directly in their classrooms. And so we highlighted disciplines that are very relevant in our department, just to get us started. I think there are about 15, and somehow I managed to get 28 students to volunteer to do a research project. I don't know how I managed that, but I'm very proud of them and their passion for this as well. So yeah, so this semester, that's what we've been working on. We've been researching those disciplines so that that information can go on the website. And that information just includes like basic knowledge about the discipline. But what we also wanted to emphasize is representation. And so we actually show the students examples of people with PhDs, and we make sure to also show an example of someone with a bachelor's or master's, because often in the STEM fields, people feel like they have to have a PhD, and that's just not true. But while we're highlighting these scientists, we're also showing diversity. So people that identify as BIPOC, LGBTQ+, and those with disabilities, we want to highlight their work and show that representation, because high school students that might be using this program in the future, if they don't see representation, they're not going to feel comfortable. They're not going to feel like they belong. So that's something we're working on as well, is highlighting the works of those people. And then also highlighting the career possibilities that each of those disciplines offer. So as a result, I will now be doing a senior thesis as of recently, starting next semester. So I have a lot of the methods and research, most of the background done from this semester and what we did in URGE last semester. I've been very passionate about this project, and right here on the left, or on the right, you can see the start of the website. It's almost done, and it will hopefully be up and running for anyone to use and look at by the end of December, so that some students at our local Talawanda High School can then use it in their classroom in January, and we'll be kind of using them as a test run. All of the teachers have agreed to have a day where they use it in their classroom, and the students just get their own opportunity to look around at what they're seeing on the website. And so the point of this is that we're then going to send out a diversity survey. And so we're going to be asking the students, what did you find that was really interesting on the website? Did you know about the geosciences before you visited this website? And we're also going to be asking them about their identities anonymously. So BIPOC, LGBTQ, do you have a disability? These sorts of things. And we're hoping to get a gauge on if the program is actually being successful in reaching that diverse population that we want to reach. So in addition to that, next semester, my supervisor, Dr. Claire McLeod, is suggesting that we also look at the state of Ohio as a whole and take some statistics, maybe from teachers across the state of Ohio, to see, are they even comfortable teaching the earth sciences? What do they know about the earth sciences? And just other really simple questions like that to give us a better gauge of what we're looking at. And of course, we will further be developing GEOD's program, and I'll be presenting that at the Geological Society of America in hopes of making more chapters around the nation, or I guess to start the state of Ohio and this region, so that we can gather more statistics to get a more accurate reading of the program's success. So yeah, the main goal is to diversify the earth sciences. And of course, educating everyone will allow for a greater general understanding. So I would love to help create curriculum change in the future, maybe 10 years down the road. Because even if you don't choose a path in the geosciences, it's really important for the general public to understand sustainability, environmental earth sciences, because that's why we have discrepancies about things like climate change. They've never been taught it, they don't understand it, and so we need to make efforts to make that change for the betterment of our future. So my future, so I'm currently applying to graduate schools or reaching out to graduate schools. These are just a few of the schools that I've reached out to or talked to at the Geological Society of America conference. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm also looking for an internship over the summer as I make that transition. And I have a picture with a highlighted country, the country of Zambia, because I have been wanting to go on a trip with our local hydrogeology professor to Zambia to work on water quality there for 4 years now. And unfortunately, COVID has canceled it for the last 2 years. So I will not be able to go this summer like I was very eager to do. But he did say that even though I'm graduating, I'll be able to attend it the following summer. So I'm really excited, and it gets pushed back a year, but I've been really excited to get to do that. So yeah. And I guess career-wise in the future, I really want to do something community-based, really making a change in the community, whether that be with water resources. I enjoy project management a lot, or I would even be willing to do something with policy change. So yeah, that is just a touch of each of my many projects. So thank you guys so much for your time. It was an honor to hear from the other presenters. And yeah, thank you guys so much.
Mackenzie, we are all so very proud of you. And thank you again. I know, again, I think all three of you have quite the fan club in the chat, and hopefully some connections can be made with our students on while they're looking toward their future endeavors. So without further ado, I'm going to let our amazing CEO wrap it up for us tonight. And thank you all again for attending and participating. Mike?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for their contributions to this call. Carolyn Watkins, Sally Gladwell, Hallie, I wish it worked out better for you. Please don't be stressed about it. You did a fantastic job. Angie, thank you so much. To each of our presenters, Mackenzie, Colin, and Julia, they were fantastic presentations. Everyone thoroughly enjoyed them. And Angie had mentioned you have an invitation if you'd like to come to our annual meeting at the University of Findlay on April 9th. We would really love to see you have an option to either present from the podium or do a poster presentation, but we'd love to have you for the proceedings of our meeting. With that, we better close up. It's been quite a night, and it's right at 8 o'clock. So thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.